Greetings, vinyl community. This will be a quick look at three new additions to the collection. One rock and roll and two contemporary classical works by American composers. The first is an album by the Grateful Dead that I tend to forget existed. This was recorded in 1970, just before they put out Working Man's Dead and American Beauty, the albums that many people would consider to be the absolute peak of their studio output. For me personally, I'd go back a little before. Oxo Moxo has always been my personal favorite. But, Working Man's Dead and American Beauty are just absolute classic albums. And as I say, a lot of people consider them that they're absolute peak studio period. So then what did the Grateful Dead do? They put out a double live album, and then they put out a triple live album, and then they put out another live album, which is this one. This came out in 1973, but it is recordings from 1970. It's from February 1970, so before the release of Working Man's Dead. There is one song on here, Black Peter, that would appear on Working Man's Dead. Otherwise, this is all material that didn't appear on the studio albums. And it's a very uncharacteristic Grateful Dead album because side one isn't really the band at all. It's acoustic performances. It kind of harks forward to the album they would put out 10 years later, Reckoning, which was all acoustic material from when they were doing separate acoustic and electric sets. And in fact, this shares two songs with that album. They do Dark Hollow and Been All Around the World. Here just performed solo as Jerry Garcia and Bob Weir duos, I guess. They do the Everly Brothers, Wake Up Little Susie, and the whole thing starts out with a Lonesome Blues performance by Pigpen. This was released as sort of a tribute to Pigpen, who had just passed when it came out. So the entire side two is devoted to Pigpen. It's two extended songs, both sung by Pigpen. The first is the Howlin' Wolf classic, Smokestack Lightning, and it's kind of a laid-back performance. It's not as ferocious as Smokestack Lightning is wont to be in the hands of the Dead or many other bands. But it's a long, moody, and obviously very determinedly bluesy performance. And it's followed by Otis Redding, Hard to Handle. Again, Pigpen is not quite as fierce as he could have been a little earlier in his life, but still a cool thing. As I said, this is an album that I tend to forget exists, so kind of nice to bring it back to my attention. It's also the album that introduced in its artwork some of the famous iconography of the Grateful Dead. There is the first appearance of the Lightning Skull, or the Steely, more prominently, is featured on Steal Your Face, so it came to be known as the Steely. And on the reverse are the dancing bears dancing around for the first time, or goose-stepping around, as it may be. And this being Bear's Choice, of course, Bear was the nickname for Owsley Stanley, we get a bear in the middle with a third eye. Very cosmic, very cosmic. Now, this is a new reissue on 180-gram Bear print vinyl, not to be confused with Bear Whiz. Pretty cool marbly effect. I like it. I heard some complaints from people who received this and felt that the vinyl was too noisy and blamed it on perhaps that marble vinyl effect. Sometimes you get an interface between two colors that may produce a sound. I didn't experience that at all. This was a fine sounding pressing. So maybe some copies aren't perfect, but mine was fine. Moving on to the first of those contemporary classical works, and by contemporary I mean within my own lifetime, certainly not recent, because this is a recording from 1977, released in 1979, and it's by the American composer Ingram Marshall, who just passed away a year ago this month, May of 2022. This is the Fragility Cycles. Marshall was a composer associated with the Columbia-Princeton Electronic Music Center. He was a student of Morton Subotnick and Vladimir Ussachevsky. This is a work prominently featuring the gambu, or suling gambu, which is a Balinese flute, a low-pitched flute. He also has a lot of electronics. There's synthesizer, there's pre-recorded tapes, and there's a 4-channel delay system that the music is performed through. And the result is very mellow, very soft and foggy. There are a lot of indistinct voices. I believe they're speaking in Swedish, so that makes it even more indistinct to my own English-speaking ears. It reminds me a lot of some of Robert Ashley's work, particularly the automatic writing material, with the kind of mysterious voices that sound like you're overhearing them but can't quite make out what's being said. He's got a picture of Sibelius in there. He's used a little fragment of one of Sibelius's symphonies as one of the sound sources for the work. And this is on the IBU or IBU music label. The catalog number being IBU 101. This may be a one-off label. I don't know. I didn't research that, but it's not an album that I've seen around, so that was nice to find yesterday. And I also found an album like the Grateful Dead one. This was released in 1973. Compositions from 1969 by Philip Glass. And this is very much the standard sound you expect from Philip Glass. The works are music in similar motion and music in fifths, both performed by ensembles consisting of electric organs and soprano saxophones, with a flute on the first piece, and both consisting of constant streams of unvarying notes, just all, I don't know if it's written in 8th or 16th notes, but it's just constant with no breath to the rhythm. I don't know how the saxophone players manage it, if they're doing circular breathing or what, but he will create an ostinato that goes over and over and over, and then suddenly add a couple of extra notes to the end. So just when you think it's just going to be unvarying, it wrong-foots you. That's very much a standard technique of Philip Glass. This came out apparently with 2 different covers. This is the one I got, so I am fine with that. And this is on Philip Glass's own Chatham Square label. So that's what I have today. Thanks very much for watching. Be well. Talk with you again soon. Bye-bye for now.